On that note, let's get started. So guys, for everyone who's watching and listening to this right now, if you don't recognize this face, my name is Damien. I'm with the team at My Blueprint, who are beyond grateful to be able to provide the opportunity for you to learn a bit more about community engagement in 2020, what that looks like for you, what opportunities might be available for your students, and of course, to learn a lot more about the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative. I'm not a huge fan of kind of those pre-written introductions. The panelists are here. Why not let them introduce themselves?
Great, thank you so much, Damien. Hi, everyone. My name's Kate. I'm the National Program Director at the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative Canada. I use the pronouns she and her, and I'm a second-generation settler of European descent to Turtle Island, or what we know as Canada. And I'm joining you today from the traditional territory known as Tiggeronto or Toronto. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Noor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Noor El Husseini. I'm a second-generation refugee and settler to Turtle Island. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the YPI Education Program Manager and Equity Lead. And I grew up in Montreal and Ottawa on the traditional territories of the Kinyan-Kinhaka and unceded Algonquin land, but I'm joining you from Tiggeronto, known as Toronto. And I'll pass it on to Pam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pam Sandhu. I'm the YPI lead teacher, and I'm a career development facilitator with the Surrey School District. I specifically work at Princess Margaret Secondary, and I'm joining you from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia.
Awesome. I just want to start by thanking Damien and everyone at My Blueprint for providing us with this platform and opportunity to share more about civic engagement and YPI specifically. So thank you so much, Damien. I know that My Blueprint is a really wonderful asset to, I'm sure, everyone on this call and teachers across Canada. So I wanted just to start by talking about civic and community engagement. What are we talking about when we talk about civic engagement? And so this is the big ideas from the Ontario Civics curriculum. I know that there's a lot of teachers from Ontario joining. And so these are the big ideas. I love civics. It's a half-credit course. It doesn't get enough credit. There's no additional qualifications. So there's many, many teachers who love teaching civics who are on it this year, and some who probably don't, but they're sort of plunging in. So we're really happy to be working with civics teachers and other social studies teachers and teachers who are teaching to these big ideas across the country, regardless of their curriculum. And so in addition to these big ideas on your screen, there are the framing questions. So for students, why should I care about issues in my community? What contributions can I make to my community? What is the most effective way to voice my position on a civic issue? What can I do to make a difference in the world? And how will I know whether my actions have been effective? And so civic engagement, community engagement is really about getting involved and making a positive difference in your community. So that can be volunteering, that can be donating, that can be raising awareness about issues and organizations. There's a whole number of different ways that young people can get involved. And I think I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit when I say these things to this audience. You've signed up for this webinar for a reason. There is this stereotype that young people can be selfish and apathetic, only caring about themselves. And yes, teenagers, it is a time for exploring self-identity, for self-discovery, but there's also huge potential for young people to contribute and make a real, lasting, and authentic difference in their community. So Alona Doherty, who is a friend of YPI and the director of the Youth and Innovation Research Project at the University of Waterloo, has published research on this. And research in neuroscience and developmental psychology shows that young people between 15 and 25 possess traits of successful innovators. They're collaborative, creative, observant, curious, willing to experiment, willing to challenge the status quo. They are risk takers, action-oriented, and they are visionary. So when young people are meaningfully engaged, society is more likely to find solutions to tackle social, environmental, and economic challenges. So, and research also shows that when young people become civically engaged, they become civically engaged as adults, they stay engaged. So what we really need to do as helping adults across generations is to share opportunities for really meaningful civic engagement and volunteerism that is skill building and makes a long lasting difference in the community. So all of that said, we wanted to get to know where you're at a little bit. So I'm going to pause here for a couple audience polls, and Damien is going to facilitate those. So where are you joining us from? We want to know first. I know that some people typed in the chat there, but please let us know, and we're happy to say hello to all of you.
All right, we're coming in. We're about 70% of the vote, and got about half coming from Ontario. Close race between BC, Yukon, and the prairies, and we got a few from Atlantic Canada as well. So awesome. Okay, I'm gonna end this poll.
So probably a lot of people familiar with what I was talking about with civics.
All right, we're ready for the second one. Second one, current state of opportunity. So from your perspective, what is the current state of community engagement opportunities for your students given the pandemic? And the options are: there are almost no opportunities for my students to get involved. There are fewer opportunities than usual for my students to get involved, but they're there if you seek them out. And then we have the same opportunities exist as usual for students to get involved. They just look different this year. A lot of things look different this year. Okay, so large majority picking that second option. There are fewer opportunities than usual for my students to get involved, but they're there if you seek them out. Okay, and we got our third poll. How familiar are you with the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative? So we're gonna launch this one. Got a few options. Never heard of YPI before. Heard of them, but not really sure what YPI is. Maybe you have a general idea, or maybe you're very familiar. Okay, good news for the YPI team. We got a majority of the votes coming in so far have either never heard of or not really sure what it is. So good news in the sense that you're gonna make a lot of new friends today.
Yeah, that's great. So
the winner, never having heard of YPI, you guys are in for a treat then. This is a wonderful organization. Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Damien.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you for sharing where you're at. And this webinar isn't just about YPI, and you'll learn YPI isn't just about YPI. We're a public charitable foundation, and part of our mission is to drive awareness to other organizations as well as to social issues. So that's sort of where we're starting. Today is Giving Tuesday. Happy Giving Tuesday after Cyber Monday and Black Friday. And sort of a sombering statistic, but one that I think is important to share, is that Imagine Canada estimates that 1 in 5 charities will close their doors in 2021 due to the pandemic. So I wanted to check in with everyone's own civic engagement. This isn't just about donating money, although that is a really important part of Giving Tuesday, obviously. And shout out to specifically arts-based organizations and sports organizations. So we all hear about the incredible need of frontline social service organizations like food banks and shelters. And of course, the needs of those organizations and the populations that they serve are so high always, and especially during these times. But arts-based organizations that are not able to make revenue due to performances they can't host, galas they can't host, and sports organizations that collect membership fees, they're really hurting. And I think they will be among the highest proportionally represented in that 1 in 5 charities that will unfortunately need to close their doors next year. So please give generously if you can. And that's what I'll say about that. So COVID-friendly civic engagement opportunities. This is what you're all here for. So again, this isn't just about YPI, so I wanted to showcase some of the organizations that YPI supports before digging into what we do as an organization. So jack.org is a national youth-focused mental health organization which trains young people to be leaders, advocates, and public speakers on the topics of mental health and stigma. Really important right now. They also bring together young people through school-based and community chapters across Canada to raise awareness and break down barriers around mental health. During the pandemic, they've moved programming online, including hosting virtual summits and creating an online resource library, which includes a toolkit for talking about mental health with peers, family, and friends. You can find the toolkit at bethere.org. So this is, and all of the organizations I will share, is an example of an organization that's raising awareness, not about themselves, not raising money particularly for themselves, but they're training young people around a social issue to support one another during the pandemic around this critical issue. Helping Hands is a grassroots youth-led organization that matches young people to volunteer opportunities where they can build skills and networks based on their interests. So it's not just a job board for volunteers though, they also provide support for students to reflect on the learning that happens during these volunteer experiences and shares strategies for young people to leverage the skills they developed to secure future career opportunities and continue to contribute to their community. They also offer classroom workshops, so you can reach out to them to request a session. And finally, Visions of Science Learning Network. This is a GTA, Greater Toronto Area-based organization working to advance the educational achievement and positive development of youth in marginalized communities through engagement in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. Their youth leading youth model, so it's a peer-to-peer support model, has shifted to virtual meetings during the pandemic with weekly STEM clubs, where STEM community leaders who are in grades 8 to 12 are the facilitators for the younger kids, grades 3 to 7, doing fun and hands-on experiments. So moving on to YPI now, I wanted to share the end result before we sort of explain how they got there. And so I'm going to share this video.
A couple weeks ago, one of my friends tried to overdose on the prescription medication after their parents had beaten them. Luckily, they hadn't taken an amount that was harmful by any accounts, but they were scared to go to the hospital because they thought their dad would hit them again. My friend lives with their dad in a different country, and due to restrictions from COVID, they're stuck living with the person that hurts them. They can't go live with their mother because of COVID, and they're not old enough to live on their own. My friend also has asthma, as well as a couple other medical issues, so they're highly susceptible to COVID. Their mother had gotten away from the relationship, but wasn't able to take my friend with them, and there was really nowhere to go. Hearing all this made me start to think, what happens to all the families like my friends? What happens to the people who are not as fortunate as me, who do not have a loving family? What happens to the mothers and their children who are still dependent on them in situations like this? Is there really nowhere for them to go? Every day I hear what my friend's father has done to them, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who knows as someone who's been directly affected by domestic violence. So when we were asked to pick a problem and a charity, I knew exactly what I wanted to go for. My name is Sydney Tai, and my partner is Grace Johnson, and the social issue that we picked was domestic violence. And the charity that we wish for the $5,000 donation to go to is the Halton Women's Place.
Every year in Canada, there is an average of 100,000 victims of domestic violence, with approximately 90 people dying annually at the hands of their abusers. Intimate partner violence accounted for 1/4 of the reports called into police about violent crimes, with the vast majority of the victims being women. Due to COVID, there has been a 20 to 30% increase in domestic violence, but the number of calls decreasing drastically because the women are under more constant monitoring. Due to COVID, families are now constantly trapped with the people that hurt them. Due to COVID, women and their families have to pick between staying in their homes or to risk their lives and potentially contracting the virus. Domestic abuse tears down a community by dismantling families and causing something of a ripple effect of repercussions that impact the community and families for years to come. Domestic violence and abuse affect not just the family, but the community as a whole. There are many different types of domestic abuse, with the main differences being short-term versus long-term. In short-term violence, we see a lot of physical violence and the victim being kept under strict watch by the abuser. Not being able to go out with friends, not being able to go to work or leave the house. We see these in long-term abuse, however, with some bigger differences. Women who are in abusive relationships for extensive periods of time tend to justify the abuse they are going through. They may not think that the relationship is bad for them because there's no physical violence. They don't realize that their abuser is slowly tearing at their mental health through insults, complaints, or just remarks that hurt you emotionally. Over time, many women will think that this is just normal. They downplay it so much, by the time they are made to feel worthless, it is very difficult for them to escape. Domestic violence also affects the children in the family. They will grow up with a weak family unit, which will make it harder for them to trust adults in their future and most likely scare them from being involved in a relationship.
We knew exactly what problem we wanted to tackle, but the issue was finding the right charity. While I was looking at the different local charities, they would often just focus onto one aspect of domestic violence. They would either educate the students, which did nothing to help the people who were currently in abusive relationships, or they had a shelter, which didn't solve the problem at all. We wanted a charity that helped people now, and one that worked to prevent further abuse. That's when we found the Halton's Women's Place. Halton's Women's Place is a shelter for women and their families to go to get away from their abusers. Women can stay there and finally escape from the abusive lives that was haunting them. They offer many different types of support, such as a 24-hour hotline where women can call if they're in need of help. They have outreach services which can help women find housing and receive safety plans and, of course, support. They also have an emergency housing unit for women and their children who need to go somewhere fast. These housing units include education for children, one-to-one counseling, therapeutic groups, and overall safe house for those who need it. They also work to educate our community about domestic violence and often teams up with schools to teach children. The Halton's Women's Place is such an important organization, and we feel that it could change lives with the $5,000. Just from 2019 to 2020, they assisted almost 800 women with their different programs. Around 200 women stayed in their shelter with their children, and they also received around 2,500 phone calls from victims of abuse who were in dire need of support. Imagine what they could do with a larger shelter and with more resources to care for people. They're always working at overcapacity to try to help as many people as possible. COVID has put a major strain on the charity, and now more than ever do people need a safe, warm home to stay at. With the $5,000, the HWP can help more families, support more people, and help people escape from their abusers.
As a society, we need to stop encouraging abusive behavior. Stop saying that he just likes you when a girl's getting bullied by a boy. Teach ways to identify and find the red flags in toxic relationships so that fewer people get trapped in them. Teach men that they do not have superiority over women. Support your friends and watch each other's backs so that they don't get isolated. Help each other out. Do not be afraid to ask for help if you need it. If you want to directly help the charity and fight against the problem, if you are over the age of 18, you can volunteer as reception, help for the children and youth, helping with housekeeping and tasks, keeping track of donations, planning events, sorting through holiday donations, and using any special skills that you might have that would help out the charity. Schools can partner with the Halton Women's Place to teach children about domestic violence and their rights and the wrongs in relationships. The most powerful change that we can make is to make sure people are educated on this subject, so fewer abusers are created and fewer people get trapped in these relationships. The future ahead of us is dark and unknown, but together we can pave the path that shines brightly.
We believe that with the $5,000 donation, Halton's Women's Place will be able to help many people who are currently stuck at home in abusive relationships and make further progress in educating the community and ending abuse. We could dream of a world where my friend and their mother are free from their father, where they're not constantly tied down in the shackles that keep them trapped and broken. We can dream of a world where people live happily in healthy relationships, free from being scared of coming home. We can dream of a world in which domestic violence isn't common practice, a world where children are free from the trauma that drowns them, and where women are free from their lives without thinking they are worthless. This isn't an issue that will just go away on its own. Let's work together to put a stop to domestic abuse and make our dream a reality. If you want a quick summary of our presentation and the points we went over, visit our website at ypihwp.crd.co. Thank you.
So I typed in the chat the website that they created as well. So these students are 15 years old and they did this project this year during COVID. And it was Aldershot Secondary School's first ever year doing YPI. So pretty impressive on many fronts, I think. And so this is the process that they underwent to get there. So YPI, the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative Canada, is a public charitable foundation that funds local social service charities across Canada. And we do that through a school program. And so we trust tens of thousands of high school students, teenagers, with hundreds of thousands of dollars that we raise every year. Why do we do that? Some people think we're nuts. So we think that young people are best positioned to deeply understand the social issues that are happening in their local communities. We have seen it every year. I'll go into sort of the big picture and the background of YPI, but essentially young people are sort of our on the ground research assistants who are telling us where we should be investing our money. And so this is the process that schools go through when they participate in YPI. So at its core, it is a group project, and young people are identifying social issues in their community for the project that they are learning deeply about. They research them, they look at what organizations are out there doing really great work in their local community. They choose one of those organizations, and they typically go out for a visit to that charity. Their goal with that visit is to collect information that informs a presentation. So the video that you just saw is an example of a presentation. In pre-COVID times, it was typically a live 10-minute pitch presentation. And you heard them mention $5,000 several times. And so YPI provides every school that we work with a grant of $5,000 for the students to direct. And so the charity that was represented by those students was the winner of the $5,000. So the requirement for YPI is that it is an inclusive project offered across the grade level. Typically that's in grade 9 or in grade 10. And so if you're a large public school, you might have 5, 7, 10 different sections of civics, of career life education, of social studies, and you would choose the best presentations from each class to advance to what we call a YPI final presentation assembly. And so the best presentations are delivered once again by those students. It's really an opportunity to showcase really wonderful student work in the project, to shine a light on your school and the good work that is happening at your school. And it's an authentic audience for the students. So you can invite members of your community, representatives of the charities that your students have selected, local officials, local guest celebrities, really sending the message that this is important. What young people have to share is important, and it's making a real life difference through this funding and through the awareness raising that they're doing through the project. And so every school has one of these fun presentation checks, and people get pretty excited about it at the end of the day when we can announce the winner. And so these are our program guidelines pre-COVID. Everything's a bit different this year, but hopefully things will get back to these guidelines next year or the following year. The full grade participates, like I said, so it's not just students who are already engaged, who are participating in extracurriculars and after school activities, and not just students who are lucky enough to have someone like Ms. Sandhu, who you'll hear from in a few moments. You have a designated YPI lead teacher. It is experiential learning, and that students actually go and visit their charities. The charities are local, they're registered, and it's all about people helping people. So it's a charity that's addressing a social issue with programs and services for the community. And like I said, the school hosts a final. The ultimate decision makers at that final is a panel of judges who are majority students at that school. So we take pretty seriously this idea that young people should have real responsibility and a voice and a say in what happens in their communities. And then COVID happened, and this is how we're shifting, pivoting, whatever word of choice you like. We're being very flexible as much as we can. Teachers are going through a lot this year. I hope everyone's doing okay out there, and students as well. I know some of you are students joining. And so this year there's a lot of unexpecteds. There's a lot of unknowns. So we're offering flexibility on full participation. Students are engaging with charities online. They're not requesting any time from the charities. They can reach out and share notes of gratitude for the charities that they've chosen, share that they have selected their charity for YPI, and these are the reasons why. And asking, especially on a day like Giving Tuesday, what do you need? How can I support you? Can I post something on Instagram to raise awareness about domestic violence? Do you need anything in particular for the shelters? What kinds of donations or in-kind services can I offer? So this is the kind of engagement that we're encouraging with charities this year, but not asks of their time during this time. We're offering virtual workshops as a YPI team, and my colleague Noor will speak a little more to that in a minute. Differentiated assignments. This is an example of something that we're doing during COVID that will carry over in the quote unquote after times. So as I shared, the typical student project in YPI pre-COVID was a 10-minute pitch presentation. And this speaks to the talents and skills of many students, but not all students. We understand that not everyone is an extrovert, not everyone likes standing up in front of an audience of many people to share what they've learned. And so doing something like a video or a creative art piece or a website, anything that is a vehicle for sharing information about the social issue and about the charity for YPI is fair game this year and probably beyond COVID. We're offering flexibility for grant splitting. So in Ontario and in BC, we're operating on a quarter or a quadmester schedule. And so we're offering a split of up to 4 ways. This is the first time we've ever done this. We did it last year during COVID, but outside of COVID, it was always a strong principle of ours that the grants should be as large as possible. We want to direct substantial funding to our participating charities to honor the work that they're doing and the engagement they're having with our students. But we felt that this was an important consideration for this year. And then obviously these big showcase events, assemblies at the end of the program year for our schools are not possible in the ways that they were pre-pandemic. And so we have a lot of schools going virtual and having online finals, but we're also seeking creative ways to showcase student work in the program outside of events. And the internet is wonderful for that, with privacy considerations in place, really advocating for the work of local organizations and shouting from the rooftops how wonderful and important their work is a key pillar of YPI's work, and that translates online pretty well. And so this is our adapted, simplified process for this year. Young people are choosing a social issue, they're researching a local charity addressing that issue, and they're sharing what they learned. Really, really simple. And so I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Noor to share a little bit more about the resources that support this work for our teachers and students.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thanks again, Damien, and thank you to everybody who's joining us. First and foremost, I hope you find yourselves in safety and wellness where you are and that your families are doing okay. I just wanted to speak a little bit more to the modifications. So, the pandemic hit, and as a team, we really wanted to prioritize our teacher and student well-being as much as possible, understanding that we were moving into emergency learning during what would be a school year unlike any other. And so we prioritized, we were thinking about what teacher and student support would look like in this generation defining time. And we were really influenced, I'd say, partly by the UN, their report that they released in May. It was titled, I believe, Protecting and Mobilizing Youth During COVID-19, where they stated it was, now is not the time to dial back investments in youth. And that youth are going to feel the hit of this pandemic more so than anybody else. And so, as a team, we wanted to remain committed to supporting students being heard in their communities and supporting really important work, frontline work that was happening on the ground with social issues and directing, through peer advocacy, having youth direct those grants to social issues and local charities that they chose. And a sort of beautiful byproduct of that was that they focused on these social issues that were most prevalent during the pandemic. So looking at food banks, looking at homelessness, looking at, really frontline work. And so part of that flexibility and that adaptation came from our part as a team. We held, deep meetings in over the summer in terms of revisiting, how can we make our programming as flexible, as critical, and as meaningful as possible, granted these challenging times that we find ourselves in. And so part of that was developing what we call a shared, our sort of online modified curriculum that Kate spoke to a little bit earlier. And we shared it with our teachers in schools across Canada. And the timing of that really coincided with our, like I said, in the summer months, really undergoing a deeper introspection about equity and inclusion in our own program model and resources, and how we could align ourselves further with some of the social justice movements and human rights issues that were brought to surface, that were always there, but truly exacerbated by COVID. And so this current curriculum, this modified curriculum, is a reflection of that process. It's a beginning of our own journey, which will continue into the future. And we really wanted to invite our schools, our teachers, and our larger community to engage in that conversation with us. As Kate mentioned, there were other forms of virtual support, and that also came through virtual workshop sessions. And so one form of that was the YPI launch workshop. So that's really a launch workshop that launches the program with students that have not experienced YPI or unfamiliar with YPI. It's a 75-minute virtual session where we have some interactive activities. We try to human as possible in this time of disconnection. And so, that workshop also aims to support authentic student learning and critical reflections around power, around privilege, around systemic oppression, particularly in response to some of the challenges and systemic barriers that COVID-19 just truly brought to light. A second form of support in the terms of those virtual workshops was our team developed a virtual workshop series that we called the Community Voices Virtual Workshop. And it's essentially in partnership with community organizations that are local to our schools across Canada. And so, granted that charity visits are not possible for obvious reasons, for safety, for protocol, and to really stand in solidarity with charities that were certainly experiencing burnout during COVID-19. In the absence of that charity research and those charity on-site interviews, I should say, we coordinated and continue to coordinate virtual guest speakers from each school's local philanthropic and social service sector to provide talks on the impact of COVID-19 in their region. So they come in and they share data, they share knowledge, they share online resources about the types of work that's happening and being led in their community by local charities, and talk about the short-term and long-term effects, the ways that young people can continue to be engaged. And so we explore these partnerships with, local community foundations, United Way chapters, and other, similar organizations and grassroots groups. And so that's been sort of, I don't like to use the word substitute, but because I don't think there is a real substitute for lived experience when you go on site and you see the work that the charitable sector does, and you meet, you put names and faces, the data becomes personal, right? That's such a transformative piece of our programming. And so we offered this virtual workshop as a way to sort of facilitate and mitigate even that piece, to share and sit together and connect together. And so part of this session today, a wonderful question that we sort of wrote out, my colleague Kate wrote out, was this idea of how do we support and create, these learning opportunities for students to be engaged citizens, right? And to be engaged in meaningful ways, in ways that are impactful, and ways that matter to them, ways that reflect the things that they care about and the issues that matter most to them. And I want to lean upon two educators, authors, social justice activists. The first being Audre Lorde, who says that there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we don't live single issue lives. And what she's speaking to really is this idea of intersectionality and interconnectedness, just us as human beings, just like our teachers in schools. They're not just teachers, they're parents, they're family members. We wear multiple hats, we have multiple identities, multiple roles that we play. And so really thinking about that, the way that we're connected, and not working so much in silos, but thinking about how different pieces of our identities or the social issues that are happening in our communities can inform different people, right? space. So like, a charity doesn't just necessarily address one single issue. Folks from all types of spaces and faces and with holding different identities come to those spaces. So really thinking about that interconnectivity piece and thinking about how that interconnectedness and that what we call intersectionality, how that can really happen in all subject matters. I know sometimes we think that equity and anti-racism and systemic oppression, it might be best housed in social studies or civics, or but I arguably as a team we'd like to encourage the idea that really these are things that we can discuss anywhere. We've seen it in environmental classes, we've seen it in phys ed, we've seen it in arts and theater, right? Like these are pieces that affect our day-to-day lives every single day, whether we benefit, whether we don't. And it's just inviting us to really think about the way that we relate to one another and how our different histories and our different biographies can really inform that relationship building, whether between ourselves, between our charity members of communities. And so I really lean upon Audre Lorde's idea of intersectionality. I think it helps the work that we do. The second one that I'll essentially leave you with before I pass it on to our wonderful teacher is from Maya Angelou. And she says, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. And this is really speaking to the idea of, leaving perfectionism behind, leaving the fear of saying the wrong thing at the wrong place at the wrong time. Granted, some of the larger movements, we understand that discussions around equity and anti-oppression are not easy. They can be very messy, but they are necessary. And I would argue that what we would say is the greatest disservice to supporting and promoting equity and eradicating some of the social issues that these students identify. The greatest disservice is not to have the conversation at all, just because we're worried about making a mistake. And so we invite you to join us in this journey of learning and unlearning, making mistakes and fumbling until we get it right enough to do better. And I'll leave you with that, and I'll pass it on to Pam Sandhu.
Hi, everybody. So again, just to remind you, I am the YPI lead teacher, as well as a career development facilitator with Princess Margaret Secondary. I've had the pleasure of being involved in the YPI program for 3 years now. So I just wanted to share my experiences about what it's like to be involved with YPI. I wanted to talk about some of the benefits of the program to our students, as well as why I personally, along with our teachers, love the program, and to help answer any questions that you may have. Like many of you, I learned about YPI through a presentation, and my initial thoughts were this sounds amazing. But knowing as educators that we were very busy, I was also concerned how much work is this going to entail. So I looked into it a little bit further, and I realized that this is essentially a turnkey operation. The program is so well laid out. They give you a complete package, and this package is very comprehensive. You are getting resources, all the resources you need. You're getting lessons plans, worksheets, templates, rubrics, videos, suggested activities, a schedule with a timeline for completion. You can essentially take that program and deliver it as is. However, that's not to say that you have to deliver it like that. It is extremely flexible and adaptable to your needs. We know that every teacher has a different teaching style. Your school and your students' needs are going to be different, so you can take it and adapt it to what works for you. So that's one great benefit of the program. And the YPI team is extremely supportive of that, which kind of leads me to the fact that I've gotten to work closely with Kate and Noor and the entire team now for 3 years, and I must say, they are awesome. They are super supportive, they're extremely helpful, they're considerate towards the needs of students, educators, they're open to feedback, suggestions. If there's anything that you ever need, you can reach out to them and they will help you. They really are very reasonable to work with, and you can tell that they come with good intentions. Their intention is to get grant money into the hands of those charities that need it, and they are willing to work with you to make that happen. It's very evident in the work that they do. In regards to the benefits to our students and how we deliver the program, we deliver the program to all of our grade 10s through our career life education program, which is a requirement for graduation. So that means all of our students, by the time they've graduated, they've gone through the YPI process. The first year that we did YPI, we were honestly blown away by the level of engagement for our students and how it had impacted them in so many positive ways. It fostered them to be more compassionate and caring towards others, socially aware, educated citizens. They became advocates for social change, wanting to make a difference in their community and think beyond themselves. They were inspired to be more humanitarian in nature, and we all know that, let's face it, teenagers can be selfish at times, so it was really awesome to see them being this way. A lot of our students, we found that once they actually made connection with the charities, this is what made the social issue real for them. So many chose to they still keep in contact with their charities, they're involved with their charities, they volunteer with them, they took it upon themselves to raise money for these charities. They were involved with a lot of our local charities such as Sophie's Place, Covenant House, West Coast Kids, Canucks Place, Backpack Buddies, Surrey Women's Center, just to name a few. Even this year, this is the first year that our students that were involved in YPI 3 years ago are graduating. And I've been reading through a lot of scholarship applications, and we are finding that 95%, I'm almost going to say 100%, but minimum 95% of our students graduating are referencing YPI in their scholarship applications, and some even university applications where they're having to write personal profiles are also, writing about that. So they're clearly seeing the value of the program, as well as our teachers. Our teachers really love the program because they know that it offers authentic, real-life learning experiences, things that are so difficult to simulate or replicate in the classroom. It's essentially putting theory into practice. We're finding it aligns perfectly with our careers courses in terms of the curriculum, the big ideas that we have here, and some of the core competencies that are part of the new curriculum here in British Columbia. Students are gaining valuable career-related skills. So a lot of our students have never had to use email, so they were creating email accounts, having these professional conversations with the charities. They're doing cold calls to charities. They're putting together presentations and learning to use a variety of digital platforms and tools such as Prezi, PowerPoint, iMovie Maker, Windows Media Player. They're using apps from their phone like Whiteboard Eraser and TikTok and Flipgrid, all these sort of programs that I'm not even familiar with. So that's awesome to see. In regards to, they're gaining tons of soft skills as well. So they are working in teams, so there's teamwork involved, there's critical thinking, organization skills. They are networking, they're building up their personal networks. A lot of these students, because as I mentioned, are still in contact with their charities, they're using them as references. They're using communication skills, public speaking skills from doing their presentations, creativity and innovation. I mean, the quality of last year was a bit different because it was our first year with COVID. So the quality of the presentations wasn't as what our first year was, but the quality of the presentations the first year were amazing. We were blown away. And a lot of the presentations really tugged at our heartstrings. Besides the digital component these students were using, they were including skits, they were writing poems, they were creating models to replicate living conditions. They were filming videos. So we had one charity, West Coast Kids, which represents kids suffering from cancer. It's to support those students. So we had a group that decided to go to Surrey Memorial Hospital to create a film there. And just even the process for them to get permission to film at the hospital was a huge undertaking for them. They had to make various phone calls, send emails, had to sign waivers and get permission, and then they were given a short period of time to film that video. So that was just, again, there's so many skills that they were gaining that is just so difficult to replicate in the classroom. The other thing that was super positive for us was that it really built a connection between our school and the community. Princess Margaret is considered to be an inner city Surrey school where quite often we're in the media for not the most positive reasons. So this time we were featured on the district website, we were featured in local newspapers, and it was for our students doing something really positive in the community. And so that was such a great experience for our students and our school to see. And from that first year, all the kids knew about YPI. It was so big. Our final was amazing. We had a celebrity guest judge, and we had our district career principal, and we invited our junior grades to come and sit through the presentation, and the students all loved it. Even though this year our participation was voluntary due to COVID and the demands of teaching, we found that we had all of our teachers still wanting to participate in the program just because they see the value in it and the positive impacts in the program. because we really are creating socially aware, educated, compassionate citizens through going through the YPI process. And really, at the end of the day, that's all we can ask for. So I cannot say enough about how fabulous YPI really is. And I do encourage you to take part in the program.
Thank you, Pam. I wanted to back up a little bit here. So this is our big picture, and this webinar is really an invitation to consider participating. We are accepting applications for new schools, both this year and in the future, but it's also really just a call to action. So I hope that the message we're leaving you with is that this isn't about YPI. YPI is all about students learning about social issues and being empowered to make a real difference in their communities, to stand up for organizations and the work that they're doing. And we've seen since 2002, when we were founded, that young people are very, very good at that. And so it's a challenge to you all, to the teachers, and a message to the students on the webinar as well. We hear you, we see you, you're doing incredible work, keep it up. But this is our big picture. So this year, 100 schools across 7 provinces are participating in the program. That adds up to about 17,000 students who will learn about their communities and advocate for charities. There's $500,000 in grants that will be distributed. And that's just the winners. And so there's about 3,000 charities that participate every year, aside from those winners. And so the benefits that charities share with us, the reasons why they participate, funding comes in third or fourth. They're really interested in participating in YPI to engage with young people. So they really are hungry for this engagement with students, to raise awareness about the social issue that they represent, that they address at their organization, and to raise awareness about their organization. And so that's the call to action there. There's this program, we're a funder, but there's organizations across the country who are really interested in hearing from your students and seeing them become involved in their mission. We were founded back in 2002, and we've spread now to 4 countries. So we work with schools in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and the US. Those are our program partners. They operate independently of YPI Canada. Internationally, we've granted $20.5 million. 10.5 is our Canadian stat, with 600,000 alumni. And so all of these numbers, we're incredibly proud of them, but really the message I would leave you with is that all of this work was not possible without teachers and without students across Canada. So that's what it's really all about. We want to continue this work with your help. So by 2023, that's our 20th anniversary, our goal is to be granting $1 million every single year through the participation of 200 schools. So if this is something that resonates with you, I encourage you to reach out and join us. If you're a teacher, and if you're a student, you can share this with the adults who are currently the decision makers, because we think that you should be the decision makers. So we have about 6 minutes left for Q&A and discussion.
There's been a few questions, and there's a few people commenting on YouTube too, which is cool. So I'll bring those up. I do want to steal one of those minutes really quick and thank Pam, as well as the team from YPI, for your time today. This was fantastic. Hearing Pam talk about all those skills, those real world skills that students had the opportunity to develop, making a cold call, to just how to communicate with somebody, getting out there and figuring stuff out on their own. That's huge. And, you know, I was going to make a joke about how much does this cost a school to participate? It doesn't, right? Like it just sounds too good to be true. So it's fantastic. Let's get to some of those questions. And Kate, you know, this just reminded me of, you were talking about how amazing some of those presentations were and how students have been able to adapt and figure out new ways to make presentations, like that video you showed. First time, well, we met at a conference, but soon after, Kate invited me to see one of these final presentations at a school in Toronto, and I was blown away. It is really cool what these students are able to do. So for every teacher listening, actually, that's gonna be our first question. So it's a good little segue. How do we get started, right? So, you know, Noor, you talked about how it's not always the civics, it's not always the careers teachers, lots of different classes can be involved in this, but I'm a teacher listening to this, or I'm a student listening to this, and I'm really pumped to go get my school involved. What does the specific process look like?
Yeah, so we have an application on our website to participate, but I would encourage, I've left this thank you slide with our contact information up intentionally because we want to get to know you. We're a big network of schools, but it really is sort of like a small town community. There's 100 schools participating. We know all of the teachers pretty intimately. We want to get to know you. So I would encourage you to reach out and start a conversation. We want to know about your community, about what issues people are facing during COVID and otherwise, and explore whether this is a good fit for you. It's a strange year to start something, I think, but we do have schools that started this year, and the video that we shared earlier, that was a first year school. So as Noor shared really beautifully, we need programs like this now more than ever. And so, yeah, I really encourage you to visit our website and apply, but more so to reach out and start a conversation because we want to get to know you.
Yep, that's great. And we'll link to that video and the other organizations that you talked about when we put this up on YouTube. I think this is a question from a student. So does YPI give a list of the charities that are available to choose from, or do students find any charity in the community that they're interested in? Maybe, Kate, Noor, you guys can answer, but Pam, it'd be awesome to hear about how your students discover these charities as well.
Yeah, I'll share just briefly first. Students are really good at using the internet. They're really good at using search engines like Google. And there's new organizations that crop up every year. Every final I go to, I wouldn't say every, but many of the finals I go to, I learn about organizations I didn't know about before. And so we don't like curating those lists. There are databases that we share, put out by community foundations, for example, that do have lists of organizations that are sorted by social issue, by population they serve, et cetera. But we do get asked that a lot. And there are organizations that for whom youth engagement is part of their mandate, and they are extra eager to participate in YPI. So if a student is challenged with finding an organization, or they've reached out and they haven't heard back, teachers will often have people in their back pockets at those partner organizations. But our criteria essentially is that they have to be registered with the Canada Revenue Agency, they have to be local to the community, and it needs to be social service, so people helping people with programs and services. Pam, do you have anything to add? How have you supported your students in selecting?
So I think, well, part of the process of YPI is kind of first researching social issues within their community. So that's naturally already starts to get the conversation moving. So that's kind of great because it brings awareness to that. And then from there, students start to research a little bit. We haven't had too many struggles. I mean, the one challenge is sometimes that there's maybe not enough charities to maybe go around, but our kids have been very resourceful. We try not to have, obviously, too many students say, for example, doing Covenant House, but we've been able to navigate, and the kids have been really good at sort of finding charities. And now, because of having gone through the process, again, like you mentioned, Kate, we're finding that teachers have that relationship with some charities. So we sort of know where to navigate any students that are struggling to say, reach out to this charity and whatnot. And you're right, there are charities that are coming up that students are making connections with. So there's, even as someone who gets to watch the presentations, I'm learning about so much of what is out there and what are the charities. And now students who are, from that first year we did it, students who would have sat through the presentations, upcoming grade 8s and 9s, it would have also triggered for them charities that they could go and visit when their turn came up for YPI. So it's just this big, effect that everyone kind of jumps on board. And now I might see a banner for some organization. I'm like, I know what that organization is about now. Right? So I'm more educated as well from this.
Yeah. And, Pam, you mentioned something that's really important there for students to listen to. Yes, you can use your amazing Googling skills and put those to the test, but maybe also do an exercise where you're thinking about what problem is near and dear to your heart, a problem that you want to solve, right? And then figure out which charities align with that. So it's a great way to focus on it as well. Had a couple other questions. Just somebody was reiterating the fact that the whole grade needs to be involved. So it's not a school or a class by class initiative. Yeah. We had a couple questions in YouTube from students in Ontario asking about if the 40-hour rule has been changed at all because of COVID. I would just say that the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative are not setting the rules for how many hours you have to volunteer. So talk to your guidance counselor at your school if you want to be 100% sure about that. And then a whole bunch of thank yous. So, guys, we're up on our hour. Again, I can't thank you enough. I'm more than grateful, or I'm super grateful that we had the opportunity to provide this platform to help spread the word about YPI. Again, we did that poll at the very start of this, asking who is familiar with YPI, and you're going to have a lot more yeses at the end of this.
Thanks, Damien. I just want to say thank you again to my Blueprint and Thank you to everyone who took the time out of their day. Thank you to Noor. Thank you to Pam. I feel really fortunate to be part of such a supportive community in my work and my personal life. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. The feeling is mutual. And for anybody that does strongly disagree, we'd love to hear why and how to make it more valuable. So we are always receptive to constructive criticism and happy to be as responsive as possible.
And feel free to reach out as well. I'm someone who's actually in the school, seeing how it's being implemented and stuff. I mean, Noor and Kate can say as much as they want, but I'm actually someone who's going through the process and going through the program, and I can definitely, help out or answer any questions that you might have. Thank you to Kate and Noor and Damien for this opportunity as well to just share about YPI, because it's such an amazing program.
Well, guys, for everyone who's still here, have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. Have a fantastic rest of your week. We're going to throw this recording up on the My Blueprint YouTube channel a little bit later this week, but you signed up to this webinar, so you'll also get it in your email inbox. Have a fantastic Tuesday, and thanks already for your time.